So welcome back to another video, and in this video we are going to be continuing on with our UIKit tutorial series, and in this particular tutorial we are going to be taking a look at a new type of view controller called UITableViewController. Now this is not a new view controller to UIKit, it's been around forever, I believe since iOS 2, but it is very useful. This view controller is pretty much a is a UI view controller subclass that already has a table built in for us, so we don't have to create our own UI table view and constrain it and all that stuff. The UI table view controller also has also conforms to UITableView delegate and UITableView data source, although you can ignore the UITableView data source conformance if you would like. You can use a difficult data source, and that won't be a problem. You just have to explicitly tell the TableView properties data source property, right, that you want to use a different data source. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I have some code written out already to get us started. In this app, what we're going to do is we're going to retrieve all the projects from a third-party API that I have. If you followed the previous videos with network requests, you should know how I'm doing that already. Inside of our class, we have three project arrays, one for all the projects, and then two for filtering out active and closed projects. There is probably a better way of doing that, but what we'll end up doing is we will have two sections in our table, one for active and one for closed projects. That's why we have those two arrays other than projects. Inside of ViewDidLoad, we are retrieving all of the projects, and then we're filtering out all the projects into the active and closed projects arrays, so we can use those for our individual sections. And then we have our retrieve projects function here. Pretty simple networking code when we have obfuscated the actual sending of the request to a method in our network manager. All right, so how do we use UITableViewController? Well, in our class definition, instead of UIViewController, we'll say UITableViewController. And now we get all the bells and whistles of our UITableViewController. Over the years, new things have been added to UITableViewController, but the class itself has been around for a while. So how then do we make sure that we tell it what kind of cell to use, how many rows should be in each section, how many sections there should be, all that kind of stuff? Well, we just simply override those methods. Now, one thing I do want to do first in ViewDidLoad is I want to register our cell for that we're going to display our projects in. So I will say table view, which is the UI table view inside of our table view controller, dot register I want a cell class So this will be project cell dot self for cell reuse identifier, and it'll be project cell dot reuse identifier. All right, now that we have our cell registered, we then retrieve our projects and do all the filtering and all that stuff. After we have done all of our filtering, we should say table view reload data. And above our retrieve projects method, we are going to have our table view methods for the data source and potentially delegate. So the first one I want to do is I want to say how many sections we've got. So we'll say number of sections, and we will simply return 2. All right. Then we will say number of rows in section. And in here, that the number of rows in the section will depend on what section it is. So we'll say if section is equal to 0. So if it's the first section, we will say return active projects dot count. Otherwise, we want to return closed projects dot count, like that. And so that is our number of rows in section method complete. Now, we're going to specify the title for each section. So we'll say title for header, title for header and section. And then we'll say if section is equal to 0, then we will return active projects. Otherwise, we will return closed projects. All right. And there is there's our sections. All the code we need for our sections completed, the number of sections, how many rows are in every section, and the title for each section. Now, we just need to specify now we need to actually specify the cell for each row. So we'll say cell for row at all right. So now here, the cell that we display is also dependent on the section. So how do we get the section if the section isn't passed into this method? Well, we get it from the index path. So we'll say if, well, actually, what we'll do instead is we will say let section equals index path dot section. There we go. If section equals 0, then let's see. What we'll do at that point is we'll say let project we'll say project equals active projects at the index path dot row. Otherwise, project will be equal to closed projects at the index path dot row. Like that. So now that we have our project, we can say guard let cell equals table view DQ reusable cell with identifier project cell dot reuse identifier for index path as project cell, else we will return a UITableView cell. We'll say cell.set project, pass it our project, and we will return cell. So pretty standard UIKit code for our table view. Now let's save it and try to run it. We have a successful build. And here we are. So we can see active projects, closed projects, stuff like that. Let's make sure, I want to make sure that my API is actually running. I don't think it's running. Is it running? Swift run. Okay, now we know for sure it's running. Let's run the app again. All right, so we have active projects and closed projects. Let's check the terminal here. Okay. So we do have that now. However, something does appear to have gone wrong. And that might be... okay, so our project is clearly empty. So I'm going to go back into Xcode here. And I'm going to make sure that those don't have a value initially. All right. So I am going to, what I'm going to try is I'm going to cut that. And we're going to go to our retrieve projects. And all right. And here we'll say table view reload data. Let's try that. See if that works. It should work now. Okay, we have a build failure. Okay, so we might need to provide these with an initial value after all. So I'm just gonna quickly add those back in. We can run our app now. Okay. And here we go. So you can see we don't have any active projects, so that section is empty. But we do still have our header for our section. And then we have our closed projects. We have 2 closed projects, test project 1 and 2. Or rather, project 1 and project 2, right? So that is pretty much how we can use our UITableViewController to display data. Now, again, you could use a diffable data source if you wanted to, and that would work perfectly fine. There's no problem with that whatsoever. There are other things you can do with a table view. With a table view controller, for example, you could use the built-in refresh control to allow for refreshing of the table, so you can retrieve new data if you need to do that. You could add a search bar to the navigation bar of your app and all that stuff, so you can search through your table. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do, and we'll cover some of those as we move forward in the series. But for now, that is how we can use UITableViewController. Thank you all so very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.